Hello everyone, welcome to today's story. After James terminated the contract, John decided to use Diep as a hostage to gain leverage. Stay with us until the end of the video to see how James handles the situation. The morning sunlight stretched across the vibrant melon field, casting a golden hue on rows of glistening green vines. Diep bent down gently, lifting each watermelon with a soft touch, her eyes calm and tender. Every movement was unhurried, as if the world had paused just for her and this patch of earth. The rustling leaves, the earthy scent of freshly turned soil, and the soft tone of her voice talking to herself while picking the fruit created an illusion of peace. "This one is ripe," she said, then smiled at a smaller melon. "This one's small, but sweet." Her words floated in the air like childhood memories, unburdened, innocent. The wind carried her quiet laughter across the rows, weaving it into the rhythm of a gentle life. She set a few melons aside, murmuring that she'd return with the basket later. There was no hurry, just sunlight, soil, and a sense of simplicity. But behind the serenity of this quiet task, shadows had begun to stir. Somewhere nearby, unseen eyes were watching, silent but deliberate, like a predator tracing its mark. The field, once a sanctuary, had unknowingly become a chessboard. Every step she took through the tall grass echoed beyond the moment. The air, though warm, held an almost imperceptible tension, as if fate itself was holding its breath. What seemed like just another peaceful day was, in truth, the opening move of a much larger game, one where her very presence held power, and one wrong turn could mean the difference between safety and exposure. Diep, unaware of the storm brewing beyond the hedges, smiled again under the sun. But fate had already placed her in the crosshairs, and the game had silently begun. Inside a dimly lit room, the air was thick with silence. A young man sat tense, fists clenched. "James has terminated the contract with us," he said, voice sharp with frustration. Across from him, his father remained calm, almost amused. The older man lit a cigarette, exhaled slowly, then smiled, cold, calculated. "Don't worry, we still have a card left. Her name is Diep." The room fell deeper into silence. The statement was not just a strategy, it was a declaration of war. James had once confronted them, warning to stay away from those he cared about. But to John, that warning sounded more like an invitation. He looked up, eyes flickering with vengeance. "This time, I'm going all in," he said quietly, but firmly. His father nodded, approving. The board was set. While James wrestled with the chaos at his company, skyrocketing wood prices, supplier pressure, John and his father plotted a move no one would expect. Diep, innocent and unknowing, was now the keystone in their power game. "Send someone to find her. Bring her back no matter what it takes," the father ordered. John didn't ask for clarification. He rose, the glint in his eyes colder than steel. He had a purpose, and this time there would be no hesitation. The name Diep, soft, tender, had become the center of a storm. While she wandered fields under the sun, two men far away sharpened their blades with her name. And just like that, the game shifted. The next move would not be a negotiation, it would be a strike, and Diep would be caught in the middle of a war she never saw coming. At the lumber yard, the machines had fallen silent. The air hung heavy as workers gradually left, one by one. No wood, no work. James stood alone in the vast storage space, phone pressed to his ear. All the suppliers raised their prices. "We can't import anymore," a voice crackled from the other side. James didn't respond. His eyes swept over the dusty piles of old timber, untouched for days. "These are all leftovers," he muttered. Wind slipped through the warehouse walls, whispering warnings only he could hear. A trusted colleague approached. "Any word on John?" James nodded, his jaw tense. "He's out of prison, and he wants this company." Puzzle pieces began to align. Sudden price hikes disrupted supply chains, rumors of legal force behind John. This wasn't market fluctuation. It was a siege, a silent, orchestrated takeover. "We could start buying wood from local suppliers," the colleague suggested. James paused. "It'll be messy, smaller loads, complex logistics." But he knew they had no other choice. Profit was no longer the goal. Survival was. "If we hold on long enough, they'll crack first," he said quietly. It wasn't about dominance anymore, it was about endurance. He clenched his fists as wind swept through the empty yard. He could almost feel the weight of the coming storm pressing down on him. Behind every decision now was a shadow. John. The company was bleeding, and James knew it. But if they could just outlast the siege, just make it through the next few months, they might live to fight. And maybe protect more than just assets. Maybe protect deep, too. In a dimly lit room, thick with tension, John stood motionless by the window, the outline of his figure cutting sharply against the gray haze of fading daylight. His breath was steady, calculated, like a man already envisioning the final move of a long game. A subordinate entered quietly, boots barely touching the floor, voice lowered to a whisper. "I've found Diep." John didn't flinch. He turned slowly, eyes sharp, movements minimal. He gave a curt nod, then delivered the words that turned air into ice. "Follow her. Don't let her disappear." His tone was clinical, devoid of emotion. This wasn't curiosity, it was control. Elsewhere, under a softer sun, Diep moved freely, her laughter echoing in the market as she sold melons with gentle pride. Her hands carried fruit, but her heart carried no fear. She was unaware that behind the canopy of trees, in the blur of passing faces, someone was watching. A camera shutter clicked from a distance. A figure jotted notes, recorded paths, marked times. John didn't care about what she was doing. He cared about where she was and how far James had gone to keep her hidden. The reports came in quickly. She lived with relatives, had no security, moved daily through predictable routes. John's lips curved into a thin, controlled smile. "Easier than I thought," he murmured. Yet there was no triumph, only cold resolve. The net around Diep was closing. While James drowned in business chaos, John circled closer, inch by inch. The game was no longer about money, it was about leverage. And Diep, still walking through quiet fields, her dress brushing the grass, was now the key to breaking James entirely. She just didn't know it yet. Under the fading light of late afternoon, James stood at the gate of the farm. His sleeves were rolled up, his collar slightly creased from a long day, and his face drawn with fatigue. Yet his tone remained composed, controlled. He wasn't here to rest. He was here to protect something fragile, something tied not to business, but to memory. Facing him was a local man, older, kind-eyed, nodding along carefully as James outlined every detail. Clean the shed daily, feed the chickens, ducks, and pigeons, water the vegetables each morning, keep an eye on the dog, His name is Haki, and if the brand runs out, go buy more. James paused only once to check if the man understood. I'll pay 300,000 VND per day. If needed, I can advance 5 million, he said, voice calm but weighted. Behind that calmness lay something else, urgency and perhaps a quiet plea. This wasn't just a task, it was a mission. This farm had once been Diep's sanctuary. Her laughter had echoed here. Her footsteps were woven into the very soil. While he couldn't guard her directly anymore, he could guard this place. It was the one thing still within reach. The man nodded, assuring him he'd find someone trustworthy. James thanked him softly, then lingered a moment longer, his gaze drifting over the rows of melon vines and the old shed. A silence passed, filled only by the soft rustle of leaves. In the distance, a bird called once, then vanished into the trees. James turned away. In a collapsing world, he held tightly to one fragile hope, that if she ever returned, if fate allowed it, she would find everything just as she left it, intact, waiting, and so would he. The phone rang in the quiet of late afternoon. Diep had just left the small village market, hands still sticky with melon sap, when she glanced at the screen. James. A soft smile touched her lips as she answered, but his voice wasn't like usual. It was lower, urgent. Don't go out anymore, he said. Stay at your uncle's house, please. Diep paused, surprised by his tone. Is something wrong? She asked gently. James hesitated, searching for words he didn't want to say aloud. I think someone's following you. Silence fell. Even the breeze seemed to still. Diep looked around instinctively, but saw only familiar faces and fading sunlight. I didn't notice anything strange, she said softly. Maybe you're just worried too much. She tried to reassure him, her voice calm. But that calmness only deepened his unease. He knew Diep, knew how she overlooked the quiet signs of danger. Please, he said again, firmer now. From tomorrow on, stay home. I'll come tonight or tomorrow morning. Her answer came quietly. Okay. She didn't fully understand the danger, but she trusted him. That was enough. They exchanged a few more words, lingering in the comfort of each other's voices, before she said goodbye. The call ended, and a thick silence followed. James stared at the black screen, his knuckles white around the phone. Powerless. He knew something was coming, but he wasn't there. Not yet. Meanwhile, Diep walked home with light steps, unaware that unseen eyes were already watching her. What seemed like a simple conversation had become the final line between safety and what waits beyond. Evening fell like a thin veil, soft and silent, masking the quiet movements lurking beneath. Diep returned home, no longer carrying melons, her footsteps unhurried. She didn't notice the motorcycle that quietly pulled into a nearby alley across the street, engine humming just once before going still. Inside her modest room, Diep sat by the window, watching the last light of day stretch across the faded wall. James's voice still echoed in her mind, steady, protective, edged with fear. If I can't come tonight, I'll come tomorrow, he'd said. She believed him, and she waited. What she didn't know was that James was far away, fighting to reach her, caught in obligations and distance, while someone else had already drawn near. Somewhere on a dark road, James drove through the night, his hands tight on the wheel, thoughts racing. Can I make it in time? Back in the shadows, John received the message. She's back at the house. He nodded once, rising slowly from his seat. No more hesitation, no more delay. The moment had come to make his move. Diep, still unaware, sat quietly with one hand resting on her phone, as if expecting another call. The room around her was still. The world outside waited, breath held. Would the next voice she heard be James's? Warm, familiar? Or would it belong to a stranger? Someone sent not with comfort, but purpose? Diep didn't know. And in that fragile pause between light and dark, fate whispered its choice. A day that began with melons and sunlight was ending with footsteps in the dark. And the answer to who would reach her first was only seconds away.
Diep sống yên bình giữa vườn dưa, không biết rằng mình để trở thành quân cờ trong cuộc chiến trả đũa của John và cha hắn với CEO James. Khi James đơn phương hủy hợp đồng, John ra lệnh truy tìm Diep. Trong lúc công ty James rơi vào khủng hoảng vì giá gỗ tăng cao, anh vẫn cố gắng bảo vệ Diep từ xa. Anh thuê người trong trang trại gọi điện dặn cô rằng ở yên trong nhà, nhưng Diep ngây thơ không nhận ra nguy hiểm đang đến gần, trong khi James vượt hàng trăm cây số để đến bên cô. Thì John đã tìm ra tung tích. Đêm buông xuống, chỉ còn lại những câu hỏi ai sẽ bảo vệ cô cho đến khi an toàn.